Alright, up until now we have created one section on the main page, this hero section. Next, we're going to add one more section, which will be showing the latest courses. It will be right here. Let's get back to the index.blade.php, the template for the main page. And right under the hero section component, let's create markup for the second section. The heading will say latest courses. Right here I'm going to use the link element, which will represent the link to the individual course, and the course block itself will be represented by the article element. Let's add a basic markup for the article element. The course block will have the header, which is going to contain the title of the course. Then we'll have paragraph with some short description of the course, as well as the footer with some additional information about the course. As a title, I'm going to use the dummy content for now, just like for the description. And then, in order to repeat this block of code a couple of times, because we're going to have 4 courses, let's just wrap this markup into for each loop and iterate over a couple of times. I'm going to create an array by using the range function. Let's specify that we need 4 elements in this array in order for this loop to iterate over 4 times. So now we will have some content for the latest courses section on the page. Let's start applying styles for individual elements. I'm going to center the heading of this section by using text center class. Let's make the font bold and increase the size of the font. Let's set for Excel. Next one, we're going to use grid for the block with courses, just to have 2 rows and 2 columns. Let's assign the following classes to turn this block into the grid, and to make 2 columns inside the grid, and the spacing between individual cells will be 4 units. As the next step, let's assign some styles to the title of the course, as well as description. The title will have font semi-bold, and the size will be Excel. And description will have normal weight. The margin from the bottom will be 8 units, and top margin will be 2 units. Now I'm going to increase the spacing between section heading and the grid. Let's turn this parent container into flexible container where elements will be aligned vertically. And to increase the spacing between child elements, I'm going to use class gap 8. Let's also restrict the width of this block by using class container and add paddings, let's say 24 units. But in this case we need only bottom padding, so let's use PB class instead, which stands for padding bottom. And by the way, the reason why we have this extra spacing around this block is because we have some classes on the main element that make the content to be positioned in a center. So let's get rid of these classes. And instead I'm going to assign the class wfull to make this section to stretch all the way from the left to the right of the screen. And since the child element is already contained within the container, we're supposed to see that this content will be aligned with the header content. But header content also has some additional padding on the left as well as on the right, so let's add the same amount of padding to our container. It will be 4 units. And right after that, as we can see, our container is properly aligned with the header content. Now let's make all those blocks with courses gray and round corners a bit. I'm going to use rounded MD class to round corners. To add background color, I'll use BG Gray 100, and when hovering over those blocks, the color should be a little darker. I'll use BG Gray 200 shade. And that is looking good, but I actually prefer to add some additional spacing around the content of the course block, and I will use P4 class for that, which is going to add some paddings. Next, let's take care of the footer of the course block. Right here we're going to add some information such as amount of lessons within the course and duration of the course. The first span will have amount of lessons, and the second one will have the total length of the course. And now to position those elements on both sides of the footer, I'm going to make the footer flexible container. The minimum amount of space in between these elements will be 2 units. But since we want those elements to be positioned on both sides, when there is enough space, I'm going to use justify between class. Alright, we're getting closer. Now let's decrease the size of those labels. Let's use small text, and the font weight will be semi-bold. And the same classes we're also going to apply to the second span. I also want to have some icons next to those elements, so let's open up Awesome website and look for icons. The first icon that I'm going to use will be film. Let's copy the SVG code and paste it into the first div. And then I'm going to find an icon for the second div. Here I will use icon with the name clock. Let's also copy the SVG code of this icon and paste it into the second element. Right after we have added these icons onto the page, let's check the result. They appeared, but the size is quite big, so let's restrict the size. I'm going to use size for both these icons. It is looking better, but the icon and the text has to be positioned on the same line. So I'll turn both of those div elements into flexible containers and align elements vertically in the center. And the spacing between the icon and the label will be 2 units. And then let's take all these classes and use them on the second div. And that's about it. This is how our blocks with courses will look like. At the end, let's also extract this whole markup that we have written in this lesson and move it into a separate component. I'm going to create component called courses, and let's paste that markup in here. So up until now we already have the header, the footer, and 2 sections on the main page, hero section as well as latest courses section. Let's continue working on the project in the next lesson.